Hey, good morning, everyone. Today we will study Parashat Pinchas. Parashat Pinchas starts off very much connected to last week's parasha, which I'll give a very quick recap. Last week's parasha, we learned that Am Yisrael is on their journey throughout the desert. And as they're going through their journey, they need to pass through other people's lands because they're going from Egypt. They're going to go around east and enter the land of Israel from the Jordan River, which is the east of Eretz Yisrael. And so as they're going across, they're crossing through these lands, they're knocking on the door and they're saying, "Hi, can we please pass through the land? We'll pass through whatever roads that you want us to pass through. We'll pay for any damages. We'll pay for the water that we drink. We just want to pass through your land. We mean no harm." And so there was different responses from some nations. The answer was no. And so what did we do? We took a detour. We just went around. Other nations, instead of saying no, attacked us. And then this happened with multiple nations. And when they attacked us, we fought because it was at that point, it was in self-defense. We were not trying to start wars. But when we asked them to pass through their land, their response was to attack us. So when we defended ourselves, we ended up conquering a ton of territory without even trying to get it. And so we would fight these wars and then we would end up with land. And that's what happened with the land of Sichon and Og, Melech HaBashan. There was these two very strong nations. Balak was the king of Melech LeMoav. Balak was the king of a country, of a nation called Moab. And we were not even close. We weren't even passing through Moab's land. We actually were past them already. On our journey, they're behind us. But Moab and Balak said, "Hey, if they come toward me, I might have to start a war against them. And I think I'm going to lose. I don't think I could beat them because they've just been pummeling through." So what Moab said is, let me try a different approach. Let me try to curse them. And he commissioned and hired a prophet named Bilam, a non-Jewish prophet, asking him to curse Am Yisrael. And the response from Bilam was, "This is not going to work. I could only curse a nation that's cursed, that deserves to be cursed. That's not how you can't just curse them." And Balak says, "No, I'll pay you." He says, "Look, I'll take your money, I'll bill you, I'll collect your money if you want to give it to me, but I'm not guaranteeing anything." So he says, "Okay, go ahead." So he goes ahead and Bilam tries to curse them, Am Yisrael, and he just blesses them. He gives a blessing, and Balak gets upset at him, and he says, "Look, I can't say anything that to impact them in a negative way if they don't deserve it." And so it happened once, it happened twice, it happened a third time. Finally, Balak got very upset. He said, "I hired you to curse them, and now you're blessing them. We're done here." And Bilam said, "I'll give you a piece of advice. I keep telling you that I can't curse them if they are behaving. If they are acting properly, their God won't let me. The God of the Jewish people and the God of the world won't allow me to curse them. But if you get them to misbehave and get them to go against the word of their God, they lose the protection of their God. Once they lose the protection of their God, then you won't even need to curse them. They'll just fall apart." You see, what Bilam tells Balak is, you're trying to curse them when they're behaving. What I'm telling you is, get them to misbehave and you won't even need to curse them. They'll just self-destruct. How? So the answer that Bilam advises Balak is, you attack them through enticing them in the sin of immorality, of immoral relations, through sexual relations. And so that's what happened. They then moved on to hiring the ladies from Midian and from Moab. Moab was Balak's country and Midian was a neighboring country. And they asked these ladies to go and entice the men. And so that's what happens. The Torah tells us at the end of last week's parasha how these women were attracting the men, and the Midrash elaborates on the story that they had some sort of like a flea market, that they were selling tchotchkes, little small items. And then they would say, "Hey, I have better items in the back if you want to come see." And when they would go see, and they say, "If you want, you could be with me," and etc., etc. And then it came to a point where they said, "But before we go any further, I need you to pray to this idol, to bow down to this idol, to eat from this meal of this foreign deity, this foreign god." And the people fell. They failed this test of sexual immorality. They failed, and because of they failed. Number one, the immoral relations. Number two, they were eating from the non-kosher foods that were brought as offerings to the foreign gods, the statues, the idol worship, and they served the idol worship. And the saddest part about this is what the Torah tells us. After the Torah tells us is that they do these actions, the Torah says, "Vayitzamed Yisrael abal pa'or." Israel became attached to the idol, meaning at first it started as a way to just give your payment to be with the ladies, and then it turned out that they actually started to grow an affinity to the action that they were doing, which was very, very, very bad. And the Torah says, Hashem becomes very upset at their behavior. And exactly as Bil'am predicted, there now is a plague and people start dying. And 24,000 people die, which is a very large number. We're in the 40th year of our journey and we're about to enter the land in a couple more months. So one thing that happens is there was a man, the prince of the tribe of Shimon. He went with the princess of Midian, and he took her, again, as they were all having relations with the ladies. Again, these men, many of them were married. They had families. They had children. It's not like this was something that they wanted to do, to assimilate and start families with them. They were doing immoral acts. And so he brought the princess of Midian and he took her toward the Mishkan, toward the tabernacle, toward the temple, to the place where the sacrifices are being brought, where the holiest of the holy places that not anyone could go to. And he was taking her to go have the relations with her in that place. And that's the backdrop of this week's parasha, where Pinchas, who is Aaron's grandson, steps up because everyone was paralyzed. It was just like this mob mentality. Everyone was doing something wrong, and someone was doing something in the holiest place, taking her toward the holiest place, and no one was able to act. Pinchas stood up, he put an end to it. He killed both of them while they were in the act. Now, is what Pinchas did correct or incorrect? That's what our parasha this week says, is that what he did was correct. He put a stop, because when he did that, it's almost as though they all broke out of their spell. The spell that they were all in, as they woke up and they said, what are we doing? And that marked the end of this plague of everyone dying with Pinchas's heroic act, the Torah tells us. And the Torah says, because of what he did, I will give him Brit Kehunat Olam, the promise of the priesthood, of the being a Kohen, to him. Now, he was already a Kohen. He was Aaron HaKohen's grandson. There's different opinions, but one explanation is that the promise of who will be the high priest, the Kohen Gadol, will come from the family of Pinchas, because Aaron HaKohen had several children. At this point, it was Elazar. Elazar was the Kohen Gadol. Elazar was Pinchas's father, right? It was one of Aaron's two sons. But the promise is now it's going to go to Pinchas to be the Kohen Gadol, and to his children, meaning because of his action, because of his act, he stood up. He showed that he understood the difference between right and wrong, that he wasn't afraid to act when he knew something was correct. And because of that, he was given this promise of peace and this promise of having the Kehunah come from him. And the Torah, after that, goes through a very brief census, once again, counting Am Yisrael, counting all of the tribes, how many people were in each, how many men was in each tribe. Why? Because we're getting ready to enter the land of Israel. That's what the purpose of this census is that we're getting ready to enter the land of Israel, and the land will be divided amongst the people that are entering the land as a form of inheritance. They will now receive, each family, each male will be receiving a portion of the land. The Torah talks about the daughters of Zelophchad. So this is, at the time, the way that it was set up was that the men would receive the inheritance of the land, with the understanding that the men would either have a wife, and so the woman would receive the land through their husbands, as opposed to giving a portion to land to the men and to the woman separately. Why? The answer is, the way the Torah very clearly shows, is that there was going to be the division of the land that was going to be split up by the tribes. So the tribe of Reuven would have a portion, the tribe of Shimon would have a portion, the tribe of Yehuda would have a portion, Binyamin would have a portion, Menashe would have a portion, and Ephraim would have a portion. And there was value in having each tribe have their own area. Now, there could be marriage between these tribes. The tribes follows the Mishpechotam Levet Avotam, follows the father's lineage. That means if someone's father is from the tribe of Yehuda, but his mother is from the tribe of Binyamin, he is considered the tribe of Yehuda as his father. So in order to maintain the division of the tribes in each community having their own area, the land was given to the men with the understanding that the men would marry a woman and the woman would live in the land also, would have a portion of the land also. But this is a way for you to maintain the portions of land. If you didn't have this, then you would have a lady receive a portion of land from the tribe of Binyamin. She would go marry someone from the tribe of let's say, Yehuda, and now you would have the sons are going to be from Yehuda living in the portion of Binyamin, and everything would fall apart in terms of division of the land. So this is how it was modeled. Okay, everyone will get a portion of land, and you maintain the division of the tribes. But then you had some cracks in the system, and that was the daughters of Zelophchad. The daughters of Zelophchad said, "Hold on a second, we're not married. Our father is not alive, so you're not going to give the portion to our father because he died, and he didn't die because he was saying anything bad about the land of Israel like Korach did. Korach and the people that were in Korach's team, that they said negative things about Moshe, about Aharon, about God, about Israel, they're not receiving a portion of the land. Fine, but our father Zelophchad didn't say anything negative about the land. He died. Now he's dead. He's not receiving the land, and we're single, and so we don't have husbands. So we're going to walk in. We don't have anywhere to go. We can't go into our father's land because he's dead. We can't go into our husband's lands because we don't have them." So God says, so Moshe says, "Let me ask God." You're right. It's a very valid question. And Hashem says they're exactly correct. You need to take care of them also. You need to give them a portion of land also. And then because of that, the Torah says, since the father was dead, you need to make sure that these girls have a portion of land, and they are given a portion of land as well. Based on that, the Torah teaches us all of the laws from the Torah, the laws of inheritances. The laws of inheritances, there's very strict laws of when someone passes away, what happens to the person's estate. It goes to the sons. If there's no sons, it goes to the daughters. If there's no sons or daughters, it then goes up to the person's father. If that person doesn't have sons or daughters or a father, then it would go up to his brothers, right? Because then essentially think about it this way. The laws of inheritances go down. And if there's no one down, then it goes up a level and then it goes down again. And if there's no one there, it goes up a level, goes down again. So first it goes down, sons, daughters. If there are no sons or daughters, then it goes up a level to the person's father. If there is no father alive, then it goes down again. It means the father's sons, which would be the person's brothers. If there are no brothers, so then it will go up another level to the grandfather. If there is no grandfather, then it will go to the grandfather's sons, which would be the person's uncle. If there are no uncles, then it will go to the person's uncle's sons, meaning his cousins. There's a system, there's a chain that all the way through the inheritance will end up falling to the next of kin. Okay, there's a lot of discussion about what happens if someone wants to go against these laws, right? Let's say someone wants to leave everything for one child for whatever reason, or wants to give more to a child, wants to give to their daughters when they have sons and daughters, when the Torah prescribes that it would only go to the sons. So this is, of course, if someone wants to leave for their daughters, so what they would do is they give what's called a gift while you're alive, what's called a living will. Very interesting. When someone dies, everything has to follow the laws of the Torah, all of the inheritances. When someone is alive, they could do whatever they want with their money. They could give it to whoever they want. You're allowed to give what's called a matana. So what the halacha says is that if someone wants to give to someone that outside of the rules of inheritances, the way they would do it is by writing a living will. And they say that this is what I decide to do with all of my assets 1 moment before I die. And so now when the person dies, they'll open up this living will and they look at it and they say, okay, a moment before he died, this is how he decided to split up his assets. And he's allowed to, and it has to be followed. Okay. I will say that we once spoke. I know that there's different customs about how to split it up between sons and daughters. Again, one thing to keep in mind is that the Torah is talking here specifically about the land of Israel, and there is value in maintaining the division of the tribes. So that's why when the Torah is giving it to the sons, because the assumption is that the daughters will not be left alone. The father will make sure that his daughters get married. The father will be paying a dowry and whatever it is to make sure that his daughters are taken care of and that the daughters will receive a portion of the land through their husbands. But when there's cracks in the system, that's what the Torah says, we need to take care of it. And that's exactly what happens with the daughters of Zelophchad. So the daughters of Zelophchad receive their own portion of land. And now the Torah says, well, what about the issue that we want to maintain a division of the tribes? If you're going to give it to the daughters, how do you solve that problem? The Torah tells us is that, so there was a limit, there was a restriction put on these girls. Since you're receiving a portion of the land, and the land will follow you, marry someone from your tribe. Now, it happens to be the tribes were massive. There was tens of thousands of people in every tribe, so it wasn't an issue, and people were usually marrying within their own families for the most part as well. But at some point, this law is abolished, and eventually the ladies are allowed to marry whoever they want. And once that happened, all of the tribes got intermingled, and that's what ends up happening at some point. The Torah tells us that, and it was a very happy time when that happened, because then the ladies were able to marry anyone from outside of the tribe, which the Talmud explains was a good thing, because you give people more opportunities and more options. Okay, so this is very interesting laws. I'll say the next section of the Torah talks about a very beautiful, I would say a beautiful imagery that I would encourage you to try to envision in your own minds. The Torah tells us that Moshe is now, and Am Yisrael, the Jewish people, are on the east of the Jordan River, which is modern day Jordan. And there's a mountain there called Har HaAvarim. And Hashem tells Moshe, you will not be entering this land of Israel. What I want you to do is to go up to this mountain on your own and take a look at the land of Israel, at its north, its south, its east, its west. Look across it, soak it in, have your moment, because soon you will die on the east of the Jordan River. You will be buried here in the east of the Jordan River, and they will go, your nation, your people, your community will follow after you die. They will enter the land of Israel. And I think this is a very emotional scene, and I try to imagine Moshe Rabbeinu going up to the top of the mountain, and you have a breeze blowing through the skies, and he just looks up, and it's silent, and he sees the north, and he sees the south, and he sees in the far west of the land, he sees the Mediterranean Sea, and he sees the Dead Sea, and he sees everything, and he has this moment. And the next line, when he has this moment, it tells us that Moshe says, God, we need to appoint a successor before I die. I need to have, quote unquote, all my ducks in a row. I need to know exactly who will be my successor before I die, because I know that if I die without appointing a successor publicly, making it known, that will lead to an issue where different people are going to step up. Even while Moshe was alive, his leadership was challenged by Korach multiple times. It happened after the times of the Meraglim. They said, let's get rid of Moshe. So he said, if we don't establish this now, it's going to lead to issues down the line. And so Hashem says, you're right. We're going to appoint Yehoshua, who is your student. He is your follower. Publicly, you'll go, you'll lean on him, put your hands on his head, which is very symbolic, and saying that you are passing on the baton, passing on the torch to Yehoshua, who will be your successor. We'll make sure that everyone is aware of it, exactly as you said. Rashi says something so beautiful here. Rashi says that this request is so symbolic of the Moshe Rabbeinu's career. He is having his moment. God is telling him he's going to die. And his concern is, but what about the people? Who's going to lead the people after me? And Rashi says he didn't think about himself in that moment. He could have said, it's not my problem. God's telling me I'm going to die and, they'll enter the land. Okay, I trust God. But he understood that it wasn't about him. In that moment, he said, but what about them? How do we ensure that they will be successful? That was his concern. Moshe Rabbeinu, his concern was the people. And this is so beautiful, the way Rashi explains. Because this is what a leader does. A leader is someone that understands that there's something much larger than him or her, than he or she. The leader understands that it's their privilege to tap into something much larger, to be part of a chain from one generation to the next, to understand that it's not about me, but it's about the larger nation, about the larger goal. And even if I don't get to benefit from it, I still want to make sure it's going to be successful, not for me, but for them. Moshe Rabbeinu put himself to the side and put the nation in the center so many times throughout his life. And as God is informing him that he will soon die, that's exactly his responses. But what about the nation? What about the people? How do we ensure that they will continue to succeed? Who will be my successor? It's a very, very, very important message taught to us by our leader toward the end of his life. I mean, we still have a lot left of the Torah, but we're wrapping up the book of Bamidbar, and very soon we'll start the book of Devarim. The book of Devarim, it's in its entirety, is only 5 weeks of Moshe Rabbeinu's life. So we are in the final months of Moshe Rabbeinu's life at this point. And it just goes to show you the type of leader that he was, that even when he was informed that his life is coming to an end, his response is, but I care about the nation. I want to make sure that they will succeed. I want to make sure that they don't have to run into issues that could be avoided. And this is a lesson of leadership in all senses: leadership in someone's community, leadership in someone's family. To understand that there's something much larger than yourself, and to think about other people. And that is Moshe Rabbeinu's legacy. You know, Moshe Rabbeinu could have thought about himself, and he didn't have to take this role. He didn't have to be the leader. He could have thought about himself, and he could have been someone who just, someone else would have stepped up, and he would have been fine. He wasn't even in Egypt at the time when God summoned him. He was with the Yitro and Midian. He would have lived a great life. He would have been a shepherd. He would have had a family, kids, but he was selfless, stepped forward with some encouragement from God, and because of him, Moshe Rabbeinu is the greatest prophet that the Jews had, and there will never be another prophet like him. And so this is the book of Moshe. He was the author. He penned the book of Devarim, which we will very soon, through prophecy, which will very soon begin. And it's like an ode. The Torah, the rest of the Torah is going to be an ode to Moshe Rabbeinu's life. So I think it's a very beautiful message. It's a very beautiful lesson that there's something much larger than each and every one of us. That if we have the privilege to tap into and to be a part of, that's our privilege. And Be'ezrat Hashem, may we each make our own individual marks and our individual contributions to this much larger picture and this much larger story. And in the zechut of that, may we always be successful in everything that we do. With that, I'll pause to see if there's any questions. If anyone has any questions, I could address them now.
Rabbi.
Yes.
The story of we just read with Balak and everything, year 40, right?
Correct. This is the 40th year of their journey. Yes.
When is the story of Korach? Is it year 1, or I'm confused a little?
Oh, excellent question. So there's two opinions. So the question is, when did the story of Korach occur? The answer is, our sages explained that it happened in the 2nd year of their journey. Now, there's different opinions. It happened at the beginning of the 2nd year or halfway through the 2nd year? But everyone agrees it happened in the 2nd year. How do they learn that? I'll explain. One opinion says that one of the things that Korach was complaining about was the service that he had in the Mishkan. And he said, hey, how come we're carrying things while you're doing all of the important things in the Mishkan? We want to be involved with the Mishkan ourselves. How come we're doing the carrying? How come? And so when did those tasks begin? They began in the beginning of the 2nd year. So that's when the complaint was. That's what one opinion said. The other opinion says Korach stepped up and made his revolution, if you will, after the spies returned with a negative report, and the nation accepted that negative report, and it was decreed upon them that they will not be entering the land of Israel. When did that happen? That happened in the month of Av, on Tish'a B'Av, on the 9th of Av of the 2nd year. Right after that, when the people got the bad report and they heard that they will not be entering the land of Israel, Korach said, it's time for me to strike. Let me go and overthrow Moshe. So all opinions explain that the story of Korach happened in the 2nd year of the journey. It's just a matter of 6 months, whether it happened in the beginning or halfway through. Here, the story of Balak is many, many years. It's decades later, right? We're in the 40th year of the journey.
Rabbi, is there do the Rabbanim discuss this issue? Why is it one after the other? Why would why
Oh,
we read these two things next to each other. It sounds like it's the same. Like after this happened. It's this is the beginning of the journey. This is the end of the journey. Is there a reason?
yeah, you're asking an excellent question. In Parashat Chukat, there's the beginning of the parasha talks about the red cow, the para aduma, which our sages explained to us we had in the first year. Or we had it already for the second year when we were opening the Mishkan. We already had a para aduma. So in the second year of their journey, they had the para aduma, and that's when the law of para aduma was taught. Then we have this incident where they want water, and they don't have water. And because of that, Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron, they fail. That happens in the 40th year. Because the Torah tells us Miriam dies. And after Miriam dies, there's no water. And the people complain. And that's when this incident happens. That happens in the 40th year. In Parashat Chukat, we have a jump from year 2. In the next line, it jumps to year 40. And Rashi explains that they had this jump. Here, it's in Parashat Chukat. It says, "Vayavo b'nei Yisrael kol ha'eda." The Bnei Israel, the entire people came. Rashi here explains, "Eda shlema shekvar metu mete midbar ve'elu parshu l'chaim." This is who is left. These are the people that will be entering the land 40 years later. So you're correct. You have 38 years between the end of one line and the beginning of the next line. You just skip, you jump. Well, the main answer is because while they were in the desert, there weren't. The Torah is not a history book. The purpose of the Torah is not to record history and every single detail along the way, because if the Torah were a history book, it jumps around. Sometimes it goes out of order. It misses details. Different times it says contradictory things, which we then need to put together. And so if the Torah's function was just a history book, the Torah would be very poor at it. We learn history from it, but there's tons of details missing. The role of the Torah is to be a guidebook. The word Torah is lehorot, means to guide us, to teach us. And so there are stories from the Torah that we're supposed to learn guidance from, messages from, that we're supposed to extract ways of life from. And it seems like the stories that were happening in the interim between year 2 and year 40, obviously there was important things happening, but not necessarily anything that the Torah wanted to highlight or to emphasize for guidance of how to live our lives. And so that's why the Torah skips it. The Torah skips it. Those details aren't necessarily relevant for the messages and the lessons that the Torah wants to teach us as a guidebook. The Torah is not a history book. The Torah is a guidebook, and it uses history to teach us how to act and how to behave.
Okay, thanks.
All right, great.
Yeah.
Have a wonderful week, everyone. Shavua tov. Be'ezrat Hashem, we'll resume next week. Take care. Bye.
Shavua tov, Rabbi. Thank you.
Shavua tov,
Bye.
Rabbi.
Thank you all. Bye.